Today we have Colton Paulhus. And so Colton discovered his true passion in solving the housing crisis. He currently serves as the CEO and co-founder of Anchored Tiny Homes, a company comprised of two generations of skilled builders. Colton is committed to creating top-notch, personalized, anchored accessory dwelling units. Welcome to the show, Colton.
Yeah, thanks for having me, man. I'm excited to be on.
Yeah, a lot for us to cover. It was nice to chat with you before the show. And so I think where we could start is really around early life. And so could you tell us a bit more about your childhood, your upbringing? What was that like?
Yeah, so I grew up right outside of Sacramento, California, in a city called Granite Bay, California. Had one brother, mom and dad were heavily involved, obviously, really good upbringing. My whole early childhood was really geared around sports. So I played football I played basketball from like fourth grade up until high school. And then in high school, I started playing football and got really serious playing sports, and actually got a Division I scholarship to play football at Colorado State. So I don't really have the entrepreneur story where I went door to door and, sold different things to people. I was really focused on becoming a professional athlete, and that was my dream my whole childhood. So what had happened is I went to Colorado State, got a Division I scholarship, and really fell in love with the game of football. Life kind of got in the way and things happened. And then when I came home after college, I ended up getting into sales, and that's what really unlocked kind of the entrepreneur journey for me. But early childhood was really geared around sports and just fun memories.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think sports, there's so many parallels between being an athlete and also being an entrepreneur. It teaches you a lot of things around teamwork, around discipline, around showing up, around adversity, right? So I think there's a lot of, lessons that translate there. And a commonality we see a lot with successful entrepreneurs is some sort of experience or exposure into sales. So can you share more about, when you got into sales, what was that about? What did you learn from that?
Yeah. So what I did is I got a job selling insurance for Farmers Insurance. And really, I just kind of fell in love with the game of giving value to a client and then getting them to commit to the product, right? So I understood early on that if I want to be great at being an entrepreneur, you have to get people to sign contracts and you have to get people to commit to your product, right? So when I was selling insurance, I was actually one of the top selling producers in the Northern California area for Farmers Insurance, primarily because of my drive, like you talked about, in sports and kind of my upbringing. I was really focused on just being consistent. Everything was about being the best and really showing up day in and day out to be the best at whatever trade I was in. And so anyway, so Farmers Insurance really taught me a lot of that. And then after Farmers, I pivoted to having my own marketing company. And then I ended up doing like 4 or 5 different startups, but which eventually led to Anchored Tiny Homes. But the primary focus was I always wanted to build a company, and I knew that if I found the right thing, and obviously Anchored Tiny Homes has been that right thing, it would eventually click and it would take off.
Yeah. And I could share a similar story in the sense that, when I first started entrepreneurship, I started a bunch of different businesses at the same time. And I think a lot of people like to dabble that. And then you start to find something that actually works, and then you double down on that. And so actually, I think there's a lot of benefit, especially when you're starting a business, to try a lot of different things and not have all your eggs in one basket, because some opportunities just take off further than others. And also sometimes you realize, hey, I like this a lot more. So can you kind of share more about, kind of the benefits or what you learned through starting those different businesses? I guess if you want to mention even what those businesses were and kind of what you took from those that then, you applied now to your current business.
You got to develop the skills. And so early on, I realized it might take 7, 8 businesses to achieve what I want to achieve. And I might fail at 7 or 8. I think most people get crippled and they don't even start their first business. So they never actually fail the 3, 4, 5, 6 times to eventually achieve what they want to achieve because they're too scared to start that first business. So I think ultimately you can't be scared to start and scared to fail. You just have to go for it and really see what comes out of it. But so ultimately I had Farmers Insurance. And then the next business that I launched was a marketing company where we specialized in digital marketing for local businesses. Nothing really took off like crazy. I think I had 15 clients at one time. And then I ended up starting a mobile app where we would connect influencers to clients for personal training. I think I ended up getting like 150 subscribers to that. So that kind of took off a little bit. And then it fizzled out after a couple years. And then I ended up starting a water bottle company, right, which didn't really take off. Then ultimately pivoted to anchored tiny homes with my dad and my brother. So we went all in. My dad's been a general contractor his whole life, 33 years. So I actually came to him with an idea for tiny homes, which at the time was tiny homes on wheels. And I said, hey, what do you think about building tiny homes? Do you think we could do it? And so he said yes. Within 3 days, I threw up an ad on Facebook and we had 300 people reach out. So I think ultimately my drive in starting multiple things, I just had to find the thing that clicked, that resonated with the consumer. And then I had developed the skills early on by failing and starting and doing sales and doing marketing and kind of learning all of those skills that enabled me to really achieve when the right thing clicked.
Yeah. And what I hear from that, Colton, is, through these different opportunities, you're learning different skill sets that then you keep, parlaying into the next opportunity. But at the same time, it seems like you're mixing between opportunities you see and also things that you're probably personally interested in, and then trying to apply those skills. And I think so that combination of having skills that you're developed, applying to opportunities that you're actually interested in starts to, eventually lead you to a path where you're successful. So yeah, let's get into the tiny home industry aspect. So how did you even identify that as an opportunity?
So it was kind of like an aha moment. So what had actually happened is I was on Facebook just searching, right? Just looking at, Facebook. And there was an ad that was ran to me by a tiny home builder as if I was a client. And so I actually looked at that ad and I started researching and kind of got all into tiny homes for like 2-3 days. And I saw that there was just a big demand from consumers. A lot of people were looking to tiny homes as an option for affordable housing, because we're in this crisis right now, really nationwide. And in California, it's been going on for a long, long time. So I saw that ad, started doing some research, saw that there was a demand from consumers. And then, like I mentioned, I went to my dad and said, hey, do you think we could build these things? And he said yes. And then I threw up that ad on Facebook, and within 3 days, we had over 300 people reach out.
Yeah. That's incredible. And so before we dive into that, because I really want to talk about, just that immediate market validation, if we want to call it, but just for our audience to set the context for those that maybe don't know what a tiny home is or don't know what an ADU is, can you explain what that is? What are the different use cases of that?
Yeah. So a tiny home on wheels is actually what we started with. So in 2019, we launched this business. We were manufacturing actually on my parents' property in Granite Bay, tiny homes on wheels. So that's basically like an RV, kind of a custom built out RV on a trailer. What had happened is in 2020, California made a law that said every residential lot in the state of California has to allow accessory dwelling units, which the other buzzword for that is mother-in-law quarters, granny flat, backyard homes. Kind of the correct term is accessory dwelling unit. So we started getting clients reaching out, daily, seeing if we built ADUs, accessory dwelling units. And so finally one day we just said, yeah, I think we do. Right. And so we ended up just meeting with clients, designing a couple units with them. My dad had already had his general contractor license, so that wasn't really a hindrance for us. And then the beginning of 2021 is really when we launched the ADU component, and then pivoted away from tiny homes on wheels. So now we're a full stick-built, custom-built ADU builder, where we focus on building accessory dwelling units in the backyards of customers' homes on site. So customers can match their main house, their main residence, and really make it their own.
I see. Yeah. And from the limited knowledge that I have, common uses of that might be you have in-laws that want to live in, with you, but not totally part of, the same house as you. Other people see it as a income opportunity to help supplement, their rent or their mortgage payment.
Yep. Yeah. So that's about the breakdown is 70% is for family. So we actually have a breakdown. So 70% is for, aging parents, kids coming home from college, and just extra space for family. And then 25% is for the investor trying to make extra money, from their property. And then obviously just 5% is kind of a wealthier client that just wants extra space on their property.
And just for our listeners, obviously California has made a big push for that. Are there specific states that, are pushing or promoting ADUs being built?
Yeah, so there's 8 states nationwide that are approved at the state level now, which California was the first. And by the end of 2025, they think there's going to be about 15 to 20 states that allow them. But what's cool is even when it's not approved at the state level, you still have cities and counties that approve them. So like we have, a franchise in Austin, Texas, San Antonio, Texas, Tampa Bay, Florida, Orlando, Florida. Those aren't approved at the state level, but they are approved at the city level. So eventually, I think the state is going to approve them. But for the meantime, the cities and the counties still are approving ADUs as a housing option.
I see. That's great. Okay. So let's jump back to what you were talking about. When you launch the business, you make this Facebook post, you get 300 inquiries. What happens from there?
So really what happens is I started meeting people at Pete's Coffee, just going over like, hey, this is what we're doing. This is the family story. So I ended up, I think, meeting with 5 different clients, and just kind of telling them the story, right? My dad's a general contractor. We've been in the industry for over 30 years. We're getting into this industry. If you want a tiny home, let us know and we can help you. So anyway, so I started meeting with clients. I ended up meeting with 2 clients that gave me a deposit and trusted us to be their builder within the first month. And that was October of 2019. And then really the rest was history. So we just saw dozens and dozens of people reaching out per month to show interest in the product, that eventually me, my dad, and brother actually quit everything we were doing in January and just went all in on this. So we were selling about 2 to 3 per month. Average ticket was about 80 to 100,000, so it was really something we felt like was a big, big opportunity. So we all decided to go all in.
I see. And how were you able to scale the team, I guess, in the early stages? Was it just, the 3 of you and finding other subs, or how did you go about that?
Yeah. So at first it was the 3 of us. We even did some of the, building ourselves to start. Like some of the framing, but we did just subcontract it out to plumbers, electricians, interior finishes, all that kind of stuff. And then eventually we just scaled the team. So we built, we hired a plumber, we hired an electrician, we hired a finish carpenter, and then started building an internal team to do the manufacturing. Now, since we've gone into ADUs, we actually subcontract everything. So we don't have any in-house employees, on the labor side. Obviously we have project managers and designers and, service people, but we don't have any, subs in-house.
Gotcha. Yeah, that's a fantastic structure there. And, one of the interesting dynamics of your story is that it's a family business. And so for people who maybe have worked with family in the past or maybe are considering it, could you share kind of your experience, or what are some of the pros and cons of being in business with family?
I think it depends on the people, right? And I think one thing we've done really well is when it's inside the lines, like when we're in business, we don't take the offense or the arguments or things that we go through in business. We don't take them outside, right? Like this is in between the lines. We all have a common goal, a common mission that we're trying to achieve the highest level of success that we possibly can. And if we understand that, we don't need to take offense to when one of us gets upset or one of us thinks we should do something different, So I think if you set the groundwork, like, look, this is just a business. We are all driven to achieve at the highest level, but we don't need to take offense. We're still family. We still love each other. We still want to do Christmas together and Thanksgiving together. So I think a lot of people don't succeed at it because they take offense, right? So they take from the workplace and they bring it outside of work. We've done a really good job of compartmentalizing work and home. And then another thing I would say is understanding the roles, right? So I think we've done a really good job at saying, okay, my brother's really an operations guru. I'm a visionary. And then my dad is really kind of that construction knowledge person. So we've divvied up the different roles, really well. And I think that's huge. I think a lot of people, get competitive inside family dynamics and say, I'm supposed to be this and I'm supposed to be that. I think we set the groundwork early on to say, look, this is where we need to sit. These are the roles that we need to play to get to where we need to get to.
Yeah, that's great, Colton. Yeah, two big takeaways from that is, first is compartmentalizing the business relationship versus the personal family relationship. And then the second part is really getting clear on who's responsible for what. So you're not, stepping on each other's toes. It's very important that, when we're in a business discussion, the energy or the way we're talking to each other may shift, may get more serious. But at this end of the day, there is a personal relationship outside of that. And yeah, I think documenting exactly who's responsible for what roles, what you talked about right there with your brother, where you're the visionary, your brother's in operations, your dad knows the construction. That's just a fantastic way to make sure everybody's just, aces in their places.
That's right. That's exactly right. Yeah, that's been huge.
Yeah. And so let's talk about pivoting, right? So you've had that happen all throughout your career, whether it be pivoting different businesses. You talked about you started first with the tiny homes on wheels. Now we're focused on ADUs. So for other entrepreneurs out there, how do you know when is the right time to pivot? Because there's a fine balance between, hey, let me have resilience, keep going, keep charging ahead here versus, okay, hey, it's actually time to make a change. How have you determined that?
Well, I think you got to start with the mission, right? So like when we started this, we were really on a mission to solve the housing crisis. And we knew that we wouldn't get emotional to the product that we were building. We were more after the mission. So to start, we felt like it was tiny homes on wheels. But then what had happened is with new laws and new legislation and consumers really reaching out to us, showing interest in the ADU front, we felt like, okay, this still fits the mission of solving the housing crisis. But we don't have to get so tied and fall in love with the tiny homes on wheels, because actually that's not going to be a scalable model for us. So I think a lot of people and creatives, because I'm a creative guy too, a lot of creatives can get so stuck in this is the way it needs to be. And they don't see no, what is the consumer saying? And what is shifting in the market that makes this the better option to go towards, right? So I think what we did really well early on is, okay, consumers are really demanding ADUs, right? They're asking us for it. Do we do it? Can we help solve their problem? And then does it fit the mission, right? So as long as it fits the mission that you're going after, and then the consumer is asking for it, I think those are the two biggest components.
Yeah, I love that. Like having a vision, but at the same time, balancing that with what customers are actually telling you. Right. Because end of the day, that's the point of a business. We're solving a problem that our customer has. Right. So we have to, put the ego down and also listen as well.
That's right. Like ultimately tomorrow, if they take every ADU law away, well, we'll start selling small single family homes because, we're not that's still the mission we're going after. We believe in solving the housing crisis. Now we hope that doesn't happen. It's right. A big demand, right? But the point is we're just not going to get so tied to ADUs in particular. Ultimately, we just want to solve the housing crisis.
Yeah, exactly. The solution per se doesn't matter. It's just focusing on what is that larger problem that we're solving. Yep. And so Colton, with construction, I feel like in general, it kind of has a reputation of it's a tough business to be in, right? Operationally challenging, et cetera. And for somebody who's obviously found success in that, what advice do you have for people that maybe are in construction now and struggling or thinking about getting into the construction business? What are some challenges to, anticipate or ways to overcome those?
Yeah, I would think ultimately, we started off really well because there was the three of us. But I think if it's just you or maybe you and a partner, don't be afraid to hire where you're weak really quickly, right? So I think like me, for example, like I mentioned, I'm a visionary sales guy, kind of always thinking of the future, right? Well, luckily I had my brother to kind of rein in that operations side to make sure things are happening. But if you don't have that, you really need to hire what I call the integrator really, really fast. So there's a book called Rocket Fuel that really kind of talks about, visionary integrator combination. And I think a lot of people want to be the visionary. They want to do the sales, especially in construction. And then they also want to operate the business. And I think you just have to balance the two and say, where am I going to spend most of my time? And then not be afraid to hire the parts that you're weak at.
Yeah, absolutely. And Colton, what you're referencing there too is like the greater model of EOS, Entrepreneurial Operating
Yes, that's
System. And so Rocket Fuel is one of those books. There's probably 6 other ones, Traction, what the heck is EOS, several books there. And, I'll also say that we implemented that in our business back in 2019, and that totally transformed our ability to scale the size of the team and operate just more efficiently and have everyone be there. And so to dive a little bit deeper into that, an integrator's role is really more about, operations, processes, making sure everyone's rowing in the right direction. A visionary is more about the strategic vision of the company. And so that was very big. The second point that you talked about too was just hire where you're weak. I think oftentimes we try to figure things out for ourselves. And there's another great book called Who Not How by Dan Sullivan, where he talks about, we don't need to figure out how to do it. Let's figure out who are the who's that already know how to do that.
Yeah.
So I think
I just read that book like 2 months ago. I love that book.
Yeah, I loved it.
Yeah.
That was great. Anything Dan Sullivan, I feel like is just great business thinking. Okay, Colton. So let's talk about how you then branched off into franchising. Tell us more about how does franchising work? How did you decide to start that part of the business?
Yeah. So actually what had happened is we were expanding a little bit into the Bay Area at the time because we were only in Sacramento for first 18 months of the business on the ADU side. And then we actually had someone reach out to us in the Bay Area that wanted to build like 5 ADUs on some rental properties. And what had happened is we're like, no, we don't service that market yet, right? We don't have the subcontractors and all of that stuff. And what had happened is he actually went to us and he's like, hey, one of my good friends actually is a lawyer for franchising, kind of helping brands get set up on the franchise side. You should talk to him. I think you have something special here that could scale nationwide. Because we had a really good system, a really good process that we followed. So he connected me with the attorney. And then, I'm like an all-in guy. So the next 3 weeks, I just spent researching franchising and learning everything I possibly could about it. And we just felt like it was a really good opportunity to expand and become a national player because this was a need from consumers, not just in California, but nationwide. So it really was kind of a connection point from a client that referred me to an attorney. And then just me doing the research and saying like, hey, this is actually a really good opportunity to solve the housing crisis at scale.
I see. Interesting. And so from branching into that, how do you kind of keep the quality control aspect of all the people that are franchising? How do you start to oversee, I guess, operations must change dramatically, right? When you just have your internal team, now you have people with their own internal teams. How do you maintain or oversee all that?
Yeah, so we're building out kind of a nationwide team right now in different markets. And so we have quality control in different parts of the country, and then as well as like onboarding specialists, and then really just our systems and processes, our SOPs really, and making sure that each franchisee, there's a checklist for every job. There's a client sign off for every job. There's, photos that we have to take. And there's just things that we follow to make sure that the quality meets our standards, and that everybody's happy. Ultimately, the customer dictates if it's a good product, right? So we have different materials that we make our franchisees purchase from, different distributors that they have to purchase from. So we know the material quality is good. And then ultimately, if the client signs off on it and the photos and the different, qualities up to par, then we feel good about the product.
I see. So just to make sure I understand that correctly, you essentially have a core national team that then is overseeing the different franchises that are executing your SOPs, but you have visibility whether they're actually following along with those SOPs or not.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. We have kind of a really broad overview of their numbers, their production, their sales, their operations, really everything. We can, they're becoming a partner, right? They're buying our business. But ultimately, we make money on the royalty component, and they're getting support from us, making sure they want to scale the way we scaled, right? Like we went from 0 to 49 million last year. And then this year we're on pace to double that. And so I think they're buying into what we've done, and they want to do what we did in such a short time. And so a lot of them, they really want to follow our blueprint and follow our system.
Yeah. And Colton, I just want to pause there and say, you really deserve a pat on the back for that. Going from 0 to 49 million in just 3-4 years is incredible growth. And then doubling that on top. I mean, that's incredible. You should be incredibly proud.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, it's been a fun ride. It's been a lot to handle, right? But at the same time, it's been fun. It's been something where like we're always shooting for the stars, just because we believe we can become the national player that becomes the market dominator really in the industry and really sets the tempo for what everybody else does.
Right. And so, Colton, what are some of the main challenges that happens when you scale that quickly, right? Because that's tremendous growth. Like, I got to imagine different things do break along the way because you're just moving so quick, right? There's so many new customers,
Yeah.
you're figuring out processes, a lot of moving pieces are happening. Can you kind of share some insights what that looks like?
I think one of the things we did early on that was a disservice to us was not creating SOPs quick enough for every single part of the business. So like to the point of how do you open up the office, right? How do you just every little detail of the business, having a checklist for that is a huge component that we've seen work over the last 12 months that we didn't have early on. And then I would say the biggest thing is not hiring skilled people fast enough. So we tried to, we looked at it like, oh, that's a big expense, when in reality, not hiring them is a way, way bigger expense. So I think what we've done good recently, the last 12 months or so, is really build a great support team and kind of pre-hire instead of waiting for that person to put out the fire, if that makes sense. So
Right.
instead of like hiring them to fire extinguish, we're hiring them beforehand to build the systems, build the process, and really implement it.
Right. Yeah. And I think that's such an important point you mentioned there, in the sense that oftentimes we try to hire the cheapest people, but those people end up costing you a lot, right? I remember hearing a quote that's along the lines of quality is a cost that pays, right?
That's right.
And so that's great. And I would also ask, what are some of the main contributing factors to be able to scale and reach that level of success in that time period?
I would say it sounds so cliche, but honestly, I think so many businesses get hung up on overthinking the product and the what's the word I'm looking for? But like the end result, when in reality, ultimately, you need to know how to get leads and close customers, and then the operations part of it. If you follow a system and you have high standards, you can figure that part out. I think the biggest thing is people don't go into a business thinking of how am I going to market that business? They just go into it like, oh, I want to create this thing. And it's like, well, have you thought about how you're going to get a customer, how you're going to land leads, how you're going to build a sales team, right? So I think we've done a really, really good job. Now we have a VP of marketing that's really a stud. And we've just done a great job of building out our marketing and sales team to scale as quickly as we have. And then we've kind of built the back ends of operations behind that.
I see. What were some of the most critical marketing channels to be able to get leads for your type of business?
So we do two things. I mean, paid is by far, far and away our best lead generator. So Meta, Facebook, Instagram, Google, but we do a ton of affiliate marketing. So we'll do a lot of real estate agents will refer us clients, mortgage officers, just local people, and we'll pay referral fees for those clients. We'll even pay clients to refer us. So if like they build an ADU, so we really have kind of a good loop. There's really like a few quadrants that we're generating leads from. Paid is number one. Affiliate marketing, I'd say, is number two. Customers referring other customers is number three. So I would say those are the biggest three ways that we're generating leads, with paid being kind of far and away the best.
I see. And Colton, can you walk us through as well, as your company scales, and we talked a lot about team building, what were some of the, I guess, different milestones in terms of building your team up until where it is, right? At what stage did it make sense to bring in certain key hires?
Yeah. So I think we've brought on, so we had our VP of marketing really, really early on. That was one thing we felt like we needed to hire really early on. And then some of the leadership positions that we've hired over the last 12 months are a VP of sales, a VP of operations, kind of a design director, someone overseeing all of the design work, a franchise director. And then we brought on a permit director and then a construction director. And all of that has happened over the last 18 to 24 months. In the beginning, for the first probably 2 years, we we oversaw a lot of the leadership. And that's what I mentioned earlier, which was one of our biggest mistakes, I think, is not hiring leadership level roles early enough on, and we've had to kind of, unlearn some bad habits, by not bringing those people on early enough.
Yeah. Any advice around how to find top talent like that? Because I can imagine a lot of people listening to this podcast might have an early stage company and they're thinking, okay, well, yeah, I want to go and make that big hire. But at the same time, it's a big risk, right? It comes with a big comp package, et cetera. If you make the wrong move, that might hurt, et cetera. So any advice around how to kind of jump over that?
I would say referrals are big, but I listen to Gary Vee a lot, and he talks about the best hire is quick firing, right? Yeah. So like that sounds harsh, but at the end of the day, within the first 3 weeks, if they're going to work out or not. I mean, you literally can just see it with the energy they bring. You can see it with, how they command the room. So I think trust your gut and don't overthink. Like if you did make a mistake and hire the wrong person and they're just not a good fit, it's nothing against that person. It's just ultimately the team success is more important, and you do have to let that person go. But I think to find good people, it's referrals. We've used some recruiting agencies, and just from various sources. We post on Indeed, and then we've hired a couple recruiting agencies that have helped us find some of those leadership roles, which has been helpful.
That's great. All right, let's talk about some skills now, Colton. So, you've obviously had a very interesting and varied, journey. And so what are some of the most important skills you've developed throughout your career?
For me, I think the biggest thing is one of my God-given gifts is just visionary. I'm always thinking of ideas, always thinking of what's next, right? But some of the skills I've developed are learning how to market and learning how to sell, right? Learning how to persuade people, and make them believe in what we're doing, right? I think that's been one of my biggest skill sets, is telling people this is where we're going. This is why we're going there. And this is why you need to join and come with us. So I think the two biggest things for me from my side is marketing and sales have been the biggest things. And then consistency, really just never quitting and having that drive to say, you know what, whatever comes our way, we're going to make it happen.
Yeah. Any recommendations on resources or anything for listeners to be able to get better at sales and marketing and or influence and persuasion?
Yeah, so there's a couple people I listen to. So on the marketing side, I think the guru right now is Alex Hormozy. Everybody's talking about him, but I think from a marketing standpoint, he's just a guru around it. And then Grant Cardone, I listen to quite a bit on the sales side. And then I'm a big reader. I listen to one Audible book per week typically, and then I'll normally read like a hard copy book at least once a month. Listen to a lot of podcasts, obviously. So just always being a learner and someone who's never satisfied with kind of where they're at. But mainly I would say just listening to people that are doing it. I think a lot of people listen to the wrong advice, from people that have actually never really built something and never actually done it. And so I think getting your advice from people that have actually built something substantial is huge. And then one thing that's been probably the biggest thing I've ever done is I joined Arete Syndicate, which is Ed Milet and Andy Frisella's kind of mastermind group. And obviously the content there is really good, but there's 2,000 people that are kind of going after the same mission in life of being a successful entrepreneur. And so I've met so many key people that have just helped substantially.
Wow, that's incredible. Yeah, I think masterminds are, a shortcut or a hack to growth, because once you're surrounded by other entrepreneurs, I mean, just the knowledge and the inspiration, et cetera, that you can get from that, and the network, for new deals, et cetera, is just incredible.
That's right.
When it comes to being a visionary, are there any habits or things you do to kind of spark that creativity, right? Like, so for me, I do a lot of my best thinking on going on just long walks I have a nature trail by my house, and I'll just go, walk and just kind of ponder. Another hack for me is I feel like anytime I travel, I feel like that just jump starts my creativity in terms of new ideas, new ways of looking at stuff, So I'm curious, is there anything you do to kind of spark that for yourself?
Yeah, something recently. I've been off and on for the last couple of years with the gym, but the last couple months I've been really consistent with the gym, and my mind just races when I'm working out. So similar, like going on walks, getting exercise is a big thing for me. And then just drives. So if I go on like a little 30, 45-minute drive, I'll have so many ideas and things that I think through just on that drive.
Yeah, absolutely. And on the flip side, always being on and, driving like that could also wear you down. So I'm curious, what are some habits or routines you do to recharge?
I take every Saturday and Sunday off. So I don't come in on the weekend. So I work hard Monday through Friday, like a lot more than 8 hours a day, but I do take off Saturday and Sunday and spend time with the family. I watch college football. I watch pro football, so to kind of disconnect a little bit, I will watch, sports. And then, like I mentioned earlier, just reading and learning and stuff like that really kind of puts my mind at ease. And then getting around the right community is a big thing for me too. So I have a lot of good quality friends, that I can rely on and really, draw from when times are hard.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And that's crucial. I think we underestimate the importance of relationships and, the positive impact they can, or positive or negative impact they can play in your lives.
That's right. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
And so speaking of people, I'm curious, who are some of the most impactful people in your life?
So I'm married, right? So my wife, and then I have a few different friends, and my dad and brother are super close. So surprisingly, we run this business together, but we are probably all like really best friends. So my brother and my dad, we lean on each other a lot when it comes to just life stuff as well. And then I'm in a group, at church. We attend Jesus Culture locally here in Sacramento. So there's a lot of solid friends that go to church and we can glean from them as well.
Yeah. And Colton, I'm curious, whether it be from those people, your experiences, et cetera, how would you describe, your general outlook in life?
I would say very hopeful, right? Like I'm not a doom and gloom guy. Obviously there's a lot of stuff going on in the world right now that's crazy and, everybody's freaking out, but I just believe all you can do is control the controllables. You can't overthink, and you just have to live your life to the best of your ability and trust ultimately that God's going to come around for you and really like be there for you. So I just think a lot of people get sucked into, media and the news and really all the negativity. And I've just been so against that. I'm like, you know what? At the end of the day, all I can control is my mindset and my life. And that's what I can control, and protecting my family, my business, and really making an impact in the people around my life. I think if more people did that, the world would be in a much better place.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think one of the most empowering exercises, I would say, is just separating, okay, this is happening, but what aspect can I control and what aspect is out of my control? And just being able to accept that and focus on that. I remember another quote that goes along the lines of, you're only entitled to the labor, never the fruit. Right. And so that means we can just do what we do. Whatever happens with the results is, let the chips fall where they may, but let's just focus on what we can do.
Yep. Yeah. That's really good. I agree with that.
Yeah. And so let's go back to Anchored Tiny Homes. I'd love to learn more about that, and for our listeners who may be interested in that as well. So what does the process look like for someone who wants to build an ADU?
Yeah, so we're really a design build firm. So we handle everything from start to finish. So a client would just reach out to us, show interest. We'd kind of price qualify them, right? And then we would actually send one of our ADU experts on site to come visit the client and make sure that, they can fit it on their property. Number one, the budget they have for it is there. And then ultimately we'll walk them through everything that they need, from financing to feasibility, right? All of those different things. We're really kind of a full all-in service. Once they do go with us, we oversee design, permitting, and construction. So we like to think of ourselves as kind of a white glove service where customers don't really have to think about what they're doing. They just hire us as the expert, because construction can be super, super daunting. And a lot of people are scared to engage in such a big construction project because it can be overwhelming. And you hear the horror stories all the time of, I got ripped off and I lost 40 grand, from this person. So I think we just want to take care of clients. And if they reach out to us, we want to make sure that we give them an accurate quote. We're not the cheapest, but we're also not the most expensive. We provide value and make sure that we take care of our clients, and people love working with us. And then the same is going to go for various franchisees because they're going to be following our same system.
I see. And so for our listeners, like I know the answer is, is going to be, it depends, but what is the general range of what an ADU might cost? And then what's the general range of, time to completion from start to finish?
Yeah. So in California, like our market, we have the Sacramento market, the Bay Area market, and then we're also in Southern California. The average across all different markets is about 215,000 for an ADU. And that's for like a 2-bedroom ADU.
What type of square footage would that be?
It's about 700 square feet.
Okay.
For that. So a lot of times, we'll sell studios as low as 95,000 and we'll build 1,200 square foot units that go up to 350, 400,000. So there's kind of a wide range. Most people are doing a 1 to 2 bed unit, from the 500 to 700 square foot range.
I see. And then what's the typical maybe range of time it takes from start to finish?
It's about 8 to 12 months. And really the only caveat is the permitting side. Certain cities, you just can't control their timelines. And so you're just kind of at the mercy on the permitting side. But overall, it's about 8 to 12 months.
I see. And for someone thinking about, maybe pursuing that path, what are some things they may want to look at with their current property? Is there a certain lot size? Is there a certain configuration of of how the layout is of the lot? What would they look for in their home to be like, okay, maybe, we could fit one there?
Well, I think so. If it's in California, there's a setback rule that's it has to be 4 feet from the property line and then 6 feet from the main house. So as long as you have a backyard that can fit an ADU with a 4-foot setback from the property line and then a 6-foot from the main house, you can make it happen. And so we've built ADUs where it's almost the whole backyard, right? And so, because people are trying to move their mom in the backyard and they just need that house back there. So I think where we see most clients come from is someone that's either looking at renting an apartment, putting their mom in a care facility, or building an ADU. And building an ADU still becomes, when you finance it, the cheapest option by far, right? You can finance a $200,000 ADU even with interest rates as high as they are for $1,500 to $1,800 a month. Whereas if you're, going to rent an apartment, at least locally in Sacramento, the Bay Area, SoCal, it's going to be $2,500 to $3,000. And so it still becomes the cheapest option.
I see. And, I think a lot of people may be scared off with the permitting stuff. So it's great that you mentioned that, you guys handle that. Do you see a lot of issues with other forms of regulations? Let's say people that live in an HOA, single family home community. What have you seen with that?
So in California is a different beast, but every state, yes. So HOAs can deny ADUs, but specifically in California, the state supersedes any HOA law. So every residential lot has to allow ADUs. So now they can make you match the main residence. So like if it's a stucco house or it has a tile roof, you will have to match the main residence, but HOAs cannot deny ADUs anymore.
I see. That's great to know. Okay, cool. And so let's talk about if somebody's interested in becoming, starting a franchise. What does that look like? What is that process like?
Yeah. So really the first thing they would need to do is reach out to our team. We have a link on our website, that says get started. They'll talk to our development director. And the first thing they'll do is kind of ask, what they're interested in, where their location is, how many territories, are they properly funded? How do they plan to get the money? And then if they really are super interested, we host what's called an approval day, where they fly in from wherever they are. And we actually host a full day of kind of a deep dive into the business and what they can expect if they do become a franchisee. So that gives them a really good idea of, will they be able to operate this business? Do they have the skill sets that are needed? And then they can really do a deep dive and learn how we do things. And then after that, it's really coming up with the money and getting started. So we have a $75,000 franchise fee per territory. And then we require, minimum ad spend per month and all of that. So I think in our FDD, it's anywhere from like 160 to 220,000 to get started for a territory in a different location. But obviously, we mentioned the 49 million. So the potential is really big.
Right. Absolutely. And for anyone thinking about either getting one built for themselves and or franchising, what would you say are some of the ways you guys differentiate from your competitors?
I would say one of the main things is we specialize in ADUs. So there's still not a lot there's none really. We're the only ADU franchise in the country. There's nobody else franchising this nationwide. Number two, most people, our competitors are general contractors that also do remodels, and they do additions, and they do decks, and they do pools, right? So we specialize in ADUs, and we live, breathe, and eat accessory dwelling units. So I think that's the biggest thing for us. And then also on the franchise side, we kind of have that first mover advantage where we are the first ADU franchise in the country.
Incredible. Awesome. Well, Colton, thank you so much for coming on today's show and sharing your journey and your background and all the different lessons you learned along the way. Before we end, I want to ask, is there any final message or anything you'd like to say?
Yeah, I would just say, if you do have a dream and you have something you want to do, there's going to be hiccups along the way and things you have to go after and cross over. Just don't give up. I think too many people give up too early on and they just quit when it's like you're right at the edge of that breakthrough. So if you do have something you want to go after, I'd say just keep going for it and don't ever quit.
That's incredible advice. And so, Colton, for anyone that wants to reach out to you or get in touch with your company, where should they go?
So anchoredtinyhomes.com is our company website. And then just, if you want to follow me on Instagram, it's just at Colton Paulhus, first and last name.
Awesome. Thank you.